4.36 is going to be about setting up patterns, and one of the things we'll need to do is determine the size of our grid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That'll be 3.5 inches. Assume that they're actually square. We can check. I turn on my sketch tools here. And we kind of look through from corner to corner. Those are lining pretty much with the marks in the center. So when I go to sketch these, so we'll have a grid 3.5 by 3.5, 3 by 2. To set up, doesn't really matter where we start the grid from. So one of the tools that we can use, we'll go 7 by 10.5. And then the lines in between. Okay, so from midpoint to midpoint, I could draw the lines and dimension them, but we also have a tool, and I don't see it being added, so let's see if it'll show up under the sketch tools. And what I'm looking for is to segment, and I don't see one. Oh, I did open up SolidWorks 2020, which we can verify down here in the bottom left corner. So you might notice a little difference between this and the previous videos, but for the tools that we're using, I don't expect there to be a whole lot of differences. Alright, so into the sketch tools, and above trim we have segment, and the segment parameters will be along that group. Do we want points or segments? So if I go to segments and tell it that I want 3 segments, we'll get 2 points along that line. And we have some equals, so I don't have to set those geometries to equal. I'll just pull the line away, and that gives me a layout for my my additional sketches. So I'll single click and rename this one to be the grid, and usually I'll rename when I want to identify that as a base feature or something that will other items are attached to. So within this sketch, I'm going to be focusing on the individual items. We have 8 equal spaces, so we'll have a total of 7 lines. So linear sketch pattern. And this is showing along the x-axis. I can turn off the x-axis. I could also change this position. We'll probably do... yeah, let's go ahead and do that one now. So if I change that to the y-axis, that picked the line. So where did my entities to pattern go? Alright, so entities to pattern is going to be the horizontal. And then if I remove the x-axis and replace it with something along the y-axis, nope, it added that one back in. Alright, so that gives me a direction. Not sure why. Oh, it was picking an object within my sketch. Probably would have been just easier to have made this one 1 and this one 2, and change the direction of the axis. So we're going to have 7 lines. I'm going to reverse the direction. They're not going to quite be 0.5 at that range. 0.5. Alright, so 7 equal spaces. We have a couple of ways that we could approach this. So then I'll go with the center line. I'm going to stay with the sketch entities, right mouse button and sketch entities. And if I go from midpoint to midpoint, and I need one more. Then I can make those equal, and then I got the midpoint. So we'll set those two to equal. And looks like we're going to need one more to finish the definition. Alright, so since it can still move, I'll go to the opposite. Select and Control Select and set to equal. Alright, so that gets me fully defined. Alright, because of the linear sketch pattern, the sketch pattern is going to control the rest. I might not have needed this one if I'd done that over there, but at least the additional two gets me to fully defined. Alright, and depending on, other than setting up and exploring these patterns, if I needed to build geometry, the center line's not going to participate anyway. Oh, I need a rectangle. So I do want to kind of have a local grid to work from. Alright, so I'm defining that geometry, and since that one's not cooperating, let's go with the intersections. So when I select the point and the two lines, that'll give me an intersection. Alright, and then my linear sketch pattern here is going to be along the x-axis, so 0.5, and with 7 regions we're going to have 6 lines. Go ahead and hit OK. So we're going to try the center line again. This time I'm just going to go to the command manager. We'll go midpoint to midpoint and midpoint to midpoint, and let's just see what happens when we make those equal. Alright, so it didn't quite get to fully defined. So we'll add one more, set it to equal, and that gets it to fully defined. Okay, so our next geometry is going to be the ones with the angle. So we still have the 1/2 inch spacing, but now we're at 30 degrees. And the center of the, whatever the midline is going to be the midpoint. So let's open up our sketch, pick our geometry, and because I'm not hiding these sketches, I am building up relations probably tied to the sketches. If I wanted these to be solely to the grid, then I would need to hide and to hide, and then I wouldn't, if for some reason I needed to change or delete sketch 4, I wouldn't end up with a child feature or dependency on that corner being in the geometry. So I'm just going to draw a line long enough, and I'm not going to be able to drag these endpoints. One of the quick checks that I did before, let's see, that was long and through the center point. So looking at that midpoint, we'll go ahead and put in the center lines to use that as a reference. Okay, and then my linear sketch pattern, we'll see if it picks up. So it added it again to the patterns. See if it still wants to add it. Nope. So setting that direction is a little bit more difficult. So if we stay with the x-axis, alright, so that one defined it as a grid. Let me get out of that and go back into it. since I lost the x-axis. So if I went to 45 degrees, the spacing is 0.5, and that's looking pretty good. And we need a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. Okay, and that looks pretty good. And so really it's the longest that we're going to have to contend with. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 4 on the other side. So let's go ahead and select the midpoint of the line, and we will set, well, since I got the midpoint of both lines, we'll go coincident. And we need the longest line, make it coincident, and looks like that one's going to be my other coincident. Alright, so I want to make sure I have an overlap. And so the issue will be that as I drag these, alright, so since we don't have the linear spacing, they're going to shrink. So let's go ahead and put in, shouldn't really matter which one I pick, 0.5. That gives us the definition. And unlike my first instinct would be to, like the convert entities, be able to drag, but the linear isn't going to work that way. So we'll trim entities, and then this is one of the places where I would look at using the power trim, so that we can just drag that spline, that geometry over, and end up with trimming out our geometry. Okay, so I'll just keep kind of working that way. I think that's a good strategy. So let's go ahead and hide. And our next sketch, go to the corner, and then this one, let's see what we're given. We're given 0.62 to the intersection and 0.2 to the intersection. So I need a center line to start with. So just go ahead and set that to for construction. And the assumption there would be, let's go ahead and zoom up and get that a little bit better centered. Okay, so that sets our geometry. And the middle line, again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we'll just make the line long enough. Okay, and so this one doesn't really have an angle, so if we bring that angle over, 32.85 is kind of an interesting number, but let's see, these are, let's say, are these going to be perpendicular? So just to check, let's go with perpendicular, and then the linear sketch pattern, and I need a total of 9. The spacing is at ½ inch. And we'll reverse the direction, and then because this was 32.85, we're going to do 90 plus 32.85. Okay, well, then in that case we would be 180 minus 32.85. Didn't give me the result that I was looking for. Alright, so that looks pretty good and takes care of most of our geometry. So that one's an overlap, and that one will get me to an overlap. Maybe I'd undo that, make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's select the midpoint, and then grab the midpoint again. Didn't really want that to be symmetric, so select the midpoint, Control select the center line, and we'll set those to the midpoint. Alright, so nope, thought I undid the coincidence. I actually need to make sure this overlaps enough that the two that are going to be at the intersection. Alright, so really didn't need that one because of the midpoint. And our angle, let's see, I'm missing a dimension, so pick those two, 0.5, that gets me to fully defined. And again, I think I'll stay with power trim and just be careful as I'm going through not to pick anything that I want to keep. Right. Go ahead and accept that one, and that stayed under defined, so the minus sign, we'll edit the sketch. Interestingly enough, I don't see any blue dots, I don't see any, oh yeah I do. There we go. So it's going to be one of those that that hides in there. So let's make sure that goes coincident. And it didn't force it to over-define, but those are going to be the little things that you'll need to be able to key in on and force this to go fully defined. And if we don't locate it, there's usually it will appear eventually in the process of going through creating the features. All right, so sketch, and then we are 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. So 500, 500, and then 500, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So just on the very edges, almost missed those. So let's stay with our lines. And we're going to have to build these out a little bit more since our geometry is going to pick up. Alright, so the direction, well, let's send this along the 45, and then as we trim it, we should be able to pick those up. So 135, total of 11, spacing of 1/2 inch, and we'll hit OK. And the middle one, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The middle one's going to be just slightly lower. And the angle's not quite set. So we'll go with that is coincident. And actually, that coincidence not gonna work. So I'll just highlight the relation, delete it, and we need to figure out which the longest is going to pick. All right, so let's go ahead with the trim. Alright, so it gives me my basic shapes, and we can start putting the dimensions on. So 0.5 from the top, and then this one's going to need to go a little bit that way. So this one, these two dimensions are going to set our angle, and those are staying pretty consistent. And that one pushed just to the outside. So interesting that 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So interesting that I can see those little lines in the corner, but they don't quite participate. Alright, so in this group, I'm not seeing my linear, and it may be because I did the trim. So, since those, I'll go ahead and undo, since those are just outside, I'm going to set those to a center line so that they don't disturb my my pattern, and then if it becomes an issue later on, we can go in and decipher it a little bit more. So just double check my my geometry real quick. 0.5 and 0.5 to the bottom side. Well, that looks pretty good, but it's not not playing out on those last two. So okay, we'll accept the geometry, hide the sketch, and on to the last panel. Alright, so I think we're going to have we have the 75 degrees on this one, so 75 degrees, ½ inch from the points. Don't know that that's really helping us with the perpendicular to the center, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 again, so I guess that does go to the to at least the center of the part. And we're going to need that a little bit longer to make sure that it clears. Our center line is from about there to about there, avoiding the midpoints. We'll make sure that these go perpendicular. And then applying the 75 degrees. And then if this was creating our geometry, then we have the 15 degrees along the linear. And there wouldn't be too much of an issue just keeping it along the x-axis. These lines would have to get that much longer. Alright, so maybe we'll try that since I've been doing the angles to get it started. Alright, let's the linear sketch pattern. What it's not going to do is the 0.5 along the x-axis is going to have that little sine or cosine error that will be corrected when I apply the finished dimension. Okay, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right click, select midpoint, and then control select the line, we'll go midpoint. We're going to have ½ inch between, so just for the variation. Let's see the longest. Well, I guess that about takes care of that, so we'll go coincident, make sure, and coincident to make sure. And on that side then, the trim, I'll probably just go back to trim to closest since we just have the 2 and the 2. And that sent me back to, alright, so that one has a coincident. Alright, so with our geometry, we grab something to diagnose and see what's able to move. And whatever is able to move is usually the item that needs the relation. Alright, so a couple of blue points, those are going to cause us to be underdefined. So coincident. So pattern's not going to take care of those. We're going to have to go through and add them individually. So in the process of trimming, I have to go back and watch the others being along the angle. I don't know if that okay, so make sure I have the right relation when I hit the delete button. Well, let's try just out of curiosity. Let's try a different relation. We'll grab those points and see if we can just make those horizontal. So different ways to approach the solutions, but give you a sense of some of the different uses of the linear pattern. And we'll show all of those and zoom to fit, and then make sure to save this. And this is 4-36.